The sun shone brightly over London that Tuesday morning. The sky was clear blue without a single cloud. It was going to be a hot day. Hundreds of tourists gathered outside Buckingham Palace, the home of the British royal family. They all wanted to see the famous changing of the guards. Among these tourists was Sarah Johnson, a 28-year-old schoolteacher from Columbus, Ohio. This was her first trip to England, a dream vacation she had saved for during 3 years of teaching special needs children. Sarah had light brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail, wore comfortable walking shoes, and carried a small backpack with water and snacks. "Excuse me," Sarah said, tapping the shoulder of an older man next to her. "Do you know when the guards change positions?" The man checked his watch. "In about 20 minutes, miss. If you want a good spot to watch, you should move closer now." Sarah thanked him and made her way through the crowd. She found a good spot near the tall black fence surrounding the palace. From here, she could clearly see 3 royal guards standing perfectly still at their posts. The royal guards were famous around the world. They wore bright red coats, shiny black boots, and tall black bearskin hats that added almost 2 feet to their height. They carried rifles and stood completely still, like statues. Their faces showed no emotion. They never smiled, spoke, or reacted to anything around them. Sarah had heard that tourists often tried to make the guards laugh or move. She watched as a young boy made funny faces at one guard, who didn't even blink. Nearby, a group of college students told jokes to another guard, who stared straight ahead as if they weren't even there. The closest guard to Sarah was different from the others. He looked slightly younger, maybe in his mid-20s. His bright blue eyes were visible beneath the shadow of his tall hat. Sarah noticed he stood very straight, his shoulders pulled back, his chin up. He looked proud in his uniform. "That's Guard Wilson," said a palace security officer who walked past. "One of our newest guards. Only been on duty 3 months." Sarah nodded and took a few photos of Guard Wilson. The summer heat was getting stronger, and she drank from her water bottle. She noticed that Guard Wilson's face looked slightly red in the hot sun. His thick red coat and heavy hat must be very hot, she thought. As time passed, Sarah saw something that worried her. Guard Wilson's face was getting more red. Small drops of sweat appeared on his forehead. His chest seemed to rise and fall faster than normal, as if he was breathing hard. Most tourists didn't notice, busy taking selfies and videos, but Sarah did. She worked with children with special needs, which had taught her to notice small changes in people. Something wasn't right with Guard Wilson. While his face remained perfectly still, without expression, his body was sending different signals. He was in trouble. The temperature had risen quickly that morning. It was now over 90 degrees. Guard Wilson had been standing in the same position for almost 2 hours in his heavy uniform. Sarah looked around. Did no one else see what was happening? The tourists continued taking photos. The other guards remained at their posts, looking straight ahead. Guard Wilson's hands, holding his rifle, began to shake slightly. His face turned from red to a worrying pale color. His eyes seemed unfocused. Sarah knew the strict rules about royal guards. No one was supposed to touch them or disturb them while they were on duty. Guards were famous for never breaking their stance, no matter what happened around them. But Sarah also knew when someone needed help. As a teacher, she had learned to trust her instincts. Something was very wrong with Guard Wilson, and no one was doing anything about it. She made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Sarah stepped forward, breaking away from the crowd of tourists. Several people looked at her with surprise. A woman nearby whispered, "What is she doing?" No one ever approached the guards this closely unless they were posing for a quick photo. "Excuse me," Sarah said quietly to Guard Wilson. "Are you feeling okay?" Guard Wilson did not move or speak. He stared straight ahead as he was trained to do. But up close, Sarah could see his breathing was too fast. His face was now very pale, and small drops of sweat ran down his temples. "Sir, I think you need water," Sarah said, a little louder. She pulled her water bottle from her backpack. "Please, just take a small break." Still no response. Sarah looked around for help. A palace security officer was far down the fence line, talking to some tourists. The other guards remained at their posts, too far away to notice their fellow guards' condition. The crowd around Sarah grew larger. People raised their phones to record the American woman talking to the royal guard. Some laughed, thinking it was just another tourist trying to make a guard react. Others frowned, knowing it was against the rules to bother the guards. "She's going to get in trouble," a man said loudly. "Someone should stop her," another person added. But Sarah ignored them all. As a teacher, she had learned to trust her instincts when someone needed help. And right now, her instincts were screaming that Guard Wilson was in serious trouble. The heat was now over 95 degrees. Guard Wilson had been standing in the same position for more than 2 hours in his heavy uniform, tall bearskin hat, and boots. No water, no breaks, no movement allowed. Sarah noticed Guard Wilson's eyes starting to lose focus. His knees seemed to wobble slightly. These were clear signs he was about to faint. Without thinking further, Sarah did something no tourist had ever done before. She stepped forward and gently wrapped her arms around Guard Wilson in a supportive hug. The crowd gasped. Phones clicked as people took photos. Several visitors shouted that she shouldn't touch the guard. 2 nearby police officers began walking quickly toward her. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered to the guard, "but you need help." For 3 long seconds, Guard Wilson remained completely still in her embrace. Sarah began to worry that she had made a terrible mistake. Maybe she had misread the signs. Maybe she would be arrested for breaking the strict rules about royal guards. Then, in a voice so quiet only Sarah could hear, Guard Wilson whispered, "Help me." In the next moment, his knees buckled. The tall, strong royal guard began to collapse. If Sarah hadn't been holding him, he would have fallen face first onto the hard pavement. Sarah wasn't very tall or strong, but somehow she managed to support his weight just enough to guide him down gently. His rifle clattered to the ground. His tall bearskin hat fell off, revealing short brown hair soaked with sweat. "He needs medical help," Sarah shouted. "Someone get a doctor." The crowd fell silent in shock. Then everything happened very quickly. The 2 police officers ran forward. The other royal guards, breaking their famous discipline, rushed from their posts to help their fallen comrade. A palace security guard pushed through the crowd with a first aid kit. Guard Wilson lay on the ground, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. His face was ghostly white. Sarah knelt beside him, holding his hand, while the police officer loosened his tight collar. "What happened?" one of the other guards asked Sarah urgently. "I think it's heat exhaustion or heat stroke," Sarah explained. "He needs water, shade, and medical attention right away." As a palace staff member ran up with a bottle of water, Sarah carefully lifted Guard Wilson's head and helped him take small sips. The crowd of tourists, now silent and concerned, moved back to give them space. No one was taking photos anymore. This wasn't a tourist attraction or a funny moment to share on social media. This was a real person in serious medical trouble, and the young American teacher who had broken all the rules by hugging a royal guard had quite possibly saved his life. An ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. The medical team quickly put Guard Wilson on a stretcher. They placed cool packs on his neck and wrists. They gave him special drinks to help with dehydration. His condition was serious, but stable. "Are you family?" one of the paramedics asked Sarah. "No, I'm just a tourist. I noticed he didn't look well and tried to help," Sarah explained. The paramedic nodded. "You did the right thing. His body temperature is dangerously high. Heat stroke can cause brain damage or even death if not treated quickly." As they loaded Guard Wilson into the ambulance, a senior palace official approached Sarah. He was a tall man in a dark suit with a serious expression. Sarah felt nervous. Would she be in trouble for touching the guard? "Miss, I need to speak with you," the official said. His name badge read Richard Townsend, head of Royal Security. Sarah took a deep breath. I know I broke the rules. I'm sorry, but he needed help. To her surprise, Mr. Townsend's serious expression softened. You have nothing to apologize for. According to the medical team, if Guard Wilson had fallen unconscious while standing, he could have hit his head very badly on the pavement. Your actions prevented that. Oh, Sarah said, relieved. I'm glad I could help. May I ask how you knew he was in trouble? Mr. Townsend asked. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Sarah explained her job as a special needs teacher. I work with children who sometimes can't tell me when something is wrong. I've learned to watch for small signs, breathing changes, skin color, tiny movements. I just noticed Guard Wilson didn't look right. Mr. Townsend looked impressed. Well, Miss Johnson. Sarah Johnson from Columbus, Ohio. Miss Johnson, I'd like to take your contact information. Guard Wilson's family will want to thank you, I'm sure. While they were talking, something unusual was happening around them. The tourists who had witnessed the event were sharing their photos and videos online. News spread quickly across social media. By the time Sarah gave her information to Mr. Townsend, the first videos were already going viral. American tourist hugs Royal Guard, saves his life, read one headline. Royal Guard breaks protocol, collapses in tourist's arms, read another. People were calling Sarah the angel tourist in comments. The videos showed her noticing something wrong, trying to help, and then catching the guard as he fell. The story was spreading quickly around the world. Sarah had no idea about any of this. After speaking with Mr. Townsend, she decided to continue her sightseeing. The day's events had been stressful, and she wanted to enjoy the rest of her London vacation. As she walked away from Buckingham Palace, several tourists stopped her. Are you the lady who helped the guard? A woman asked with an Australian accent. Yes, but it wasn't a big deal, Sarah said, surprised by the question. It is a big deal. You're all over the internet. The woman showed Sarah her phone screen, where a video of her hugging Guard Wilson already had over 50,000 views. Sarah was shocked. Oh my goodness, I didn't mean to cause a scene. Throughout the afternoon, more people recognized Sarah. Some asked to take photos with her. Others simply thanked her for her kindness. Sarah felt uncomfortable with all the attention. She had only done what anyone would do, help someone in need. Meanwhile, at London's Royal Hospital, Guard Wilson was receiving treatment. His name, the public learned, was James Wilson. He was 24 years old and had served in the British Army for 3 years before becoming a Royal Guard. The doctors confirmed he had suffered severe heat exhaustion, just short of life-threatening heat stroke. His body temperature had reached 104 degrees. Without quick medical help, he could have suffered serious damage to his brain and organs. The American tourist likely saved him from a much worse outcome, the hospital spokesperson told reporters. Guard Wilson is now stable and recovering well. By evening, Sarah's simple act of kindness had become international news, and back in her hotel room, her phone began ringing with calls from news organizations around the world. Sarah woke up the next morning to find 27 missed calls on her phone. There were also over 100 text messages from friends and family back in Ohio. Even her school principal had called 3 times. What in the world? She mumbled, still half asleep. Then she remembered yesterday's events at Buckingham Palace. Sarah turned on the TV in her hotel room. Her mouth fell open in shock. There she was on BBC News, hugging Guard Wilson as he collapsed. The news anchor was calling her the American hero teacher. This isn't happening, Sarah said to herself. She was just a regular person who had noticed someone needed help. Why was this such big news? Her phone rang again. This time, it was her mother calling from Ohio. Honey, are you okay? You're all over the news here. I'm fine, Mom, Sarah assured her. I just helped someone who wasn't feeling well. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Sarah, you're on every TV channel. Your students saw you on the news, And now the whole school is talking about how their teacher saved a royal guard. After talking with her mother, Sarah decided she needed to turn off her phone. She wanted to enjoy the rest of her vacation without all this attention. Just as she was about to leave her hotel room, the phone on the nightstand rang. It was the hotel manager. "Miss Johnson, there are several news reporters in our lobby asking to speak with you. Would you like to meet with them, or should I ask them to leave?" "Please ask them to leave," Sarah said quickly. "I don't want to give any interviews." The manager paused. "There's also someone else here to see you, a man named Richard Townsend from Buckingham Palace. He says it's important." Sarah remembered Mr. Townsend from yesterday. He was the head of royal security who had taken her contact information. "I'll meet with him," she decided. 10 minutes later, Sarah sat in a private room off the hotel lobby. Mr. Townsend entered with a young woman who carried a folder. "Miss Johnson, thank you for meeting with me," Mr. Townsend said. "This is Emily Parker from the Palace Communications Office. We need to discuss yesterday's events." Sarah's stomach tightened. Maybe she was in trouble after all. Mr. Townsend must have noticed her worried look. "Please don't be concerned. You've done nothing wrong. In fact, we've come with an invitation." Emily opened her folder and explained. "Guard Wilson, James, is recovering well. His family is extremely grateful for your help. They would like to meet you. And," she paused, "His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, has also expressed interest in thanking you personally." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "The Prince wants to meet me. Because I hugged a guard. Because you saved a member of the royal household staff from serious injury." Mr. Townsend corrected her. "Your quick thinking prevented what could have been a much worse situation." While Sarah tried to process this information, Emily continued. "The palace rarely comments on incidents involving royal guards. But in this case, His Royal Highness feels your actions deserve recognition." "There's something else," Mr. Townsend added. "James Wilson has asked to see you. He remembers little of what happened, but he knows you helped him. He'd like to thank you personally." Sarah thought for a moment. She hadn't planned to become famous or meet royalty on this trip. She just wanted to see London's famous sights and then go home to her students. But she did want to know how James was doing. "I'd like to visit James in the hospital," she decided. "As for meeting the prince, can I think about it?" "Of course," Emily said. "The invitation remains open." After Mr. Townsend and Emily left, Sarah sat alone, trying to make sense of how her simple vacation had turned into something so unexpected. Her ordinary act of kindness was now being talked about around the world. Later that afternoon, a palace car arrived to take Sarah to the hospital. As they drove through London streets, she noticed people looking at their phones, and then at her, recognizing her face. Sarah hadn't wanted fame or attention, but as the car approached the hospital, she realized her life had changed in ways she couldn't have imagined when she woke up yesterday morning. The hospital hallways were quiet as Sarah followed a nurse to James Wilson's room. 2 palace security officers stood outside his door. They nodded respectfully to Sarah as she approached. "He's awake and feeling much better," the nurse told Sarah. "The doctor says he can likely go home tomorrow." Sarah felt nervous as she entered the room. What would she say to this man she had hugged in front of hundreds of people? A man she didn't even know. James Wilson was sitting up in bed, looking much better than when Sarah had last seen him. His face had returned to a healthy color. He wore a simple hospital gown instead of his heavy red guard uniform. "Miss Johnson," he said, smiling as she entered. "The woman who broke all the rules." Sarah blushed. "I'm sorry about that. I just thought you needed help." "Sorry." James laughed softly. "You have nothing to be sorry for. The doctor said I was minutes away from a full heat stroke. If I had fallen on my own, I could have hit my head badly on the pavement." An older woman sitting beside the bed stood up. "Miss Johnson, I'm Margaret Wilson, James's mother. I can't thank you enough for what you did." Sarah shook her hand. "Please call me Sarah. And I only did what anyone would do." "That's just it," James said. No one else did anything. Hundreds of tourists saw me every hour, but no one noticed I was in trouble. No one except you. Sarah sat down in the chair that Mrs. Wilson offered. For the next hour, they talked about what had happened. James explained that guards were trained never to move or speak while on duty, no matter what happened. Even when I started feeling dizzy, my training told me to stay perfectly still, he said. It was over 95 degrees that day. My uniform weighs nearly 15 pounds. The bearskin hat alone is 5 pounds. We're not supposed to drink water during our 2-hour shifts. That sounds dangerous, Sarah said. It can be, James admitted. But it's tradition. The Royal Guards have stood watch this way for hundreds of years. Well, tradition or not, you almost died, Mrs. Wilson said firmly. She turned to Sarah. After what happened, the palace is reviewing their policies for guards during hot weather. You've started something important. As they talked, Sarah learned more about James. He was 24 years old and had served in the British Army for 3 years. Being selected as a Royal Guard was a great honor. His father and grandfather had both been Royal Guards too. I was following family tradition, James explained. Dad would have stood there until he dropped. And he did, once, Mrs. Wilson added. 20 years ago, your father fainted during a hot summer ceremony. But no one caught him. He broke his nose when he fell. A nurse came in to check James's vital signs. Everything looks good, she said. You're very lucky, young man. After the nurse left, James asked Sarah about her life in Ohio. She told him about her students, her small apartment, and her cat named Churchill, which made him laugh. I named him after Winston Churchill because he's round and grumpy but secretly sweet, Sarah explained. As they were talking, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emily at the Palace Communications Office. His Royal Highness would like to meet you tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you're available. James saw Sarah's surprised expression. What is it? He asked. The prince wants to meet me tomorrow, Sarah said, still staring at her phone in disbelief. You should go, James encouraged her. It's a great honor. But I'm just a regular person. What would I even say to a prince? Mrs. Wilson patted her hand. Just be yourself, dear. That's who helped my son, after all. As visiting hours came to an end, James asked Sarah if they could stay in touch after she returned to Ohio. I'd like to thank you properly when I'm back on my feet, he said. Sarah smiled and wrote down her email address for him. What had started as a simple act of kindness was becoming something more. She had come to London as a tourist seeking adventure, but she never expected to make friends with a royal guard or be invited to meet a prince. As Sarah left the hospital, photographers waited outside. Camera flashes lit up the evening as she walked to the waiting palace car. Her simple London vacation had turned into something extraordinary. Sarah hardly slept that night. How could she? Tomorrow she would meet a real prince. She tried on 3 different outfits before finally deciding on a simple blue dress she had packed for nice dinners. What do I even say to royalty? She wondered aloud as she brushed her teeth. In Ohio, the most important person she had ever met was the school superintendent. The next morning, a black car with small royal flags arrived at her hotel exactly at 9:30 a.m. The driver, a friendly older man named Henry, smiled at her nervousness. Don't worry, Miss Johnson. His Royal Highness is very kind. Just remember to call him Your Royal Highness the first time you speak to him, and Sir after that. Sarah nodded, trying to remember the rules Emily had told her over the phone. Don't offer to shake hands first. Don't turn your back. Don't ask personal questions. The car drove through a side entrance to Buckingham Palace that tourists never saw. Sarah's heart beat faster as they passed through security gates. This was really happening. Emily was waiting for Sarah in a small but beautiful room inside the palace. The walls were cream-colored with gold designs. Large paintings of landscapes hung in golden frames. The chairs looked too fancy to sit on. His Royal Highness will join us shortly, Emily explained. He's very interested in hearing your perspective on what happened with Guard Wilson. Before Sarah could ask what that meant, the door opened. A palace staff member announced, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. Sarah stood quickly, almost knocking over her teacup. The prince walked in, smiling warmly. He looked just like he did in photos, but somehow more normal in person. He wore a simple dark blue suit with a red tie. Miss Johnson, he said, extending his hand. I'm delighted to meet you. Your Royal Highness, Sarah said, remembering to curtsy slightly. Thank you for inviting me. The prince sat down and motioned for Sarah to do the same. For the next 20 minutes, they talked about what had happened at the palace 2 days ago. The prince asked thoughtful questions about how Sarah had noticed James Wilson's condition when no one else did. I work with children who sometimes can't tell me when something is wrong, Sarah explained. I've learned to watch for small signs. A valuable skill, the prince nodded, and one that potentially saved a man's life. Then the prince said something that surprised Sarah. Miss Johnson, what happened has made us reconsider some of our traditions. The Royal Guards represent centuries of history, but we must also ensure their safety. Because of your actions, we're implementing new protocols for extreme weather conditions. Sarah listened as he explained that guards would now have shorter shifts during hot weather. Water breaks would be allowed. Medical staff would check guards regularly on hot days. These changes might seem small, the prince continued, but they represent an important shift in how we balance tradition with the well-being of the people who serve the crown. Sarah felt overwhelmed. Her simple act of helping someone had led to actual policy changes at Buckingham Palace. There's something else, the prince said. He nodded to Emily, who handed him a small blue box. This is the Royal Victorian Medal, he explained, opening the box to reveal a silver medal on a blue and white ribbon. It's given to people who have rendered extraordinary service to the crown. The Queen has approved this award for you. Sarah's mouth fell open. For me, but I just helped someone who needed it. Exactly, the prince smiled. Sometimes the most important service comes from seeing a need that others miss and having the courage to act. With cameras recording the moment, the prince presented Sarah with the medal. She couldn't believe this was happening to her, a regular teacher from Ohio who had just been on vacation. After the ceremony, the prince had one more surprise. Guard Wilson, James, is being released from the hospital today. He and his family have asked if you would join them for dinner this evening. A car will pick you up at 7, if that's agreeable. Yes, of course, Sarah nodded, still stunned by everything. As Sarah left Buckingham Palace, holding the small blue box with her medal, she thought about how life could change in unexpected ways. 3 days ago, she had been an ordinary tourist taking photos. Now she had a royal medal and was having dinner with the family of a royal guard. Outside the palace gates, tourists were taking photos, just as Sarah had done days earlier. One little girl pointed at her. Mommy, that's the lady who hugged the guard. I saw her on TV. Sarah smiled and waved. Her vacation wasn't turning out anything like she had planned. It was turning out even better. At exactly 7 o'clock, a car arrived at Sarah's hotel. This time, it wasn't a palace car, but a regular family sedan. James himself sat in the passenger seat, while his father drove. Good evening, Miss Johnson, James said, stepping out to greet her. He looked much healthier now, with good color in his face and a warm smile. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a simple blue shirt, very different from his guard uniform. Please call me Sarah, she reminded him, happy to see him recovered. Sarah it is then, James agreed. And this is my father, William Wilson. Mr. Wilson shook Sarah's hand firmly. We can't thank you enough for what you did for our son, Miss Johnson. The drive to the Wilson family home took about 30 minutes. They lived in a neat brick house in a quiet neighborhood outside London. Flowers bloomed in the front garden, and warm light glowed from the windows. It's not a palace, James joked as they walked to the door, but it's home. Inside, Mrs. Wilson greeted Sarah with a hug. The house smelled wonderful: roast beef, fresh bread, and apple pie. Two teenage girls, James's younger sisters Emma and Lucy, watched Sarah with wide eyes. "Is it true you met the prince today?" Emma asked as soon as Sarah sat down. "Emma," Mrs. Wilson scolded, "let our guest get comfortable first." "It's okay," Sarah laughed. "Yes, I did meet him. He was very nice." During dinner, Sarah learned more about the Wilson family. They had a long history of service to the country. James's father had been a royal guard for 20 years. His grandfather had guarded the palace during World War I. Even James's great-grandfather had been a guard for King George V. "It's a family tradition," Mr. Wilson explained proudly. "4 generations of Wilsons have stood guard at Buckingham Palace." Sarah told them about her own family in Ohio, her parents who were both teachers, her younger brother studying engineering, and her grandmother who had inspired her to become a teacher. She always said that watching carefully and noticing what others miss is the most important skill a teacher can have. Sarah explained, "I guess that's why I noticed James wasn't feeling well." After dinner, while Mrs. Wilson and the girls cleared the table, James showed Sarah the family's collection of photographs and medals in the living room. "This was my grandfather." James pointed to a black and white photo of a young man in uniform. "And this was my father on his first day as a royal guard." Sarah noticed how similar they all looked. Tall, strong men with the same serious expression and proud stance. "And now," James said, "we'll add a photo of me being saved by an American tourist." They both laughed. What could have been a tragedy had become something they could now joke about. When it was time for Sarah to leave, the entire Wilson family walked her to the car. Mrs. Wilson hugged her again. The girls asked for selfies with the famous American teacher. Mr. Wilson shook her hand and thanked her once more for saving his son. James was the last to say goodbye. "I'm back on duty next week," he told her. "But they're changing our shifts for hot days. Only 1 hour standing guard instead of 2. And we'll have water breaks, all because of you." "Not because of me," Sarah said. "Because what happened to you showed them that some traditions need to change." As Sarah prepared to get into the car, James hesitated, then asked, "How much longer will you be in London?" 3 more days, Sarah replied. "Then I go back to Ohio." "Would you allow me to show you around London properly tomorrow? No fainting this time, I promise." His smile was hopeful. Sarah thought about her planned visit to the Tower of London. But seeing the city with someone who actually lived there would be special. "I'd like that very much," she said. As the car drove away, Sarah thought about how strangely life worked sometimes. She had come to London to see famous buildings and take photos. Instead, she had received a royal medal, made new friends, and maybe even found something more. Back at her hotel, Sarah called her mother to share the day's events. "Mom, you won't believe what happened today," she began. "Try me," her mother laughed. "After seeing my daughter on world news receiving a medal from a prince, I'll believe anything." The next morning, James arrived at Sarah's hotel at 9:00 a.m. He wore casual clothes and carried a small backpack. He looked completely different from the stiff, formal guard Sarah had first seen at the palace. "Ready for a real London tour?" he asked with a smile. "Not the tourist version, but the places Londoners actually love." Sarah nodded eagerly. Her guidebook showed all the famous places, but seeing London through a local's eyes would be special. They started with a small cafe where James said they made the best breakfast in London. They sat at a tiny table by the window and ate eggs, bacon, and fresh bread, while James planned their day. "We could visit the usual places," James said, "or I could show you my London. Places most tourists never see." "Your London, definitely," Sarah said without hesitation. Their first stop was a small bookshop hidden on a narrow side street. Books filled every space from floor to ceiling. The owner, an older man with thick glasses, greeted James by name. "This shop has been here for 150 years, James explained. "My grandfather brought my father here." My father brought me here. I bought my first history book in this very shop. Next, they visited a garden tucked between tall buildings. Most people walked past without noticing it. But inside the iron gates was a peaceful green space with flowers, benches, and a small fountain. "This is where I come to think," James said as they sat on a bench. "Sometimes after a long shift at the palace, I need quiet. This place is always here." Throughout the day, James showed Sarah parts of London she would never have found in her guidebook. A tiny museum dedicated to mechanical toys, a market where they ate the best fish and chips Sarah had ever tasted, a street performer who recognized James and played their favorite song. "How does he know you?" Sarah asked. "I stop and listen every Tuesday after my shift," James explained. "Sometimes the smallest kindnesses matter, like actually seeing the people others walk past without noticing." Sarah thought about how she had noticed James when no one else did. Maybe they were similar in that way. As afternoon turned to evening, they walked along the Thames River. The setting sun turned the water golden. Street lamps began to light up along the path. "Thank you for today," Sarah said. "I've seen the real London now." "There's one more place," James told her. He led her to a small bridge over the river. "This spot has the best view in London. Not of Big Ben or the palace, but of the river and the people and the city itself." They stood side by side, watching boats pass below them. The city lights reflected in the water like stars. "Sarah," James said quietly, "I need to ask you something." Sarah turned to face him. The evening light made his blue eyes look deeper, more serious. "After you go back to Ohio, would you stay in touch? Write emails or call sometimes?" Sarah smiled. "I'd like that very much." "Good," James looked relieved, "because meeting you, even in those strange circumstances, has been the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." As they walked back toward Sarah's hotel, a group of tourists stopped them. "Excuse me," a woman said, "aren't you the American who saved the Royal Guard? We saw you on the news." Before Sarah could answer, James spoke up. "She is, and I'm the guard she saved." The tourists' eyes went wide. They asked for photos with both Sarah and James. A small crowd gathered around them. "Is this what your life is like now?" James whispered to Sarah as they posed for another photo. "I think it's what our lives are like now," Sarah corrected him. Later, as they said goodbye outside Sarah's hotel, neither wanted the day to end. "I have tomorrow off too," James said. "There's still more of London to show you." "I'd like that," Sarah replied. "And then maybe someday you can visit Ohio, and I'll show you my world." "It's a promise," James said. As Sarah watched him walk away, she thought about how one moment, one decision to help someone in need, had changed everything. She had come to London looking for memories to take home. Instead, she had found connections that might last forever. And it had all started with a hug that broke all the rules. 6 months had passed since Sarah's London vacation. She was back in her classroom in Ohio, teaching her special needs students. The walls of her classroom were decorated with pictures her students had drawn. Among these colorful drawings hung one special photo: Sarah and James standing in front of Buckingham Palace on her last day in London. Her students loved hearing the story of how their teacher had hugged a royal guard and saved his life. They called it Miss Johnson's Royal Adventure. Some days, when the class had worked especially hard, Sarah would show them videos on her computer of the royal guards marching in their red coats and tall black hats. "Is that your friend James?" the children would ask, pointing at each guard. "No, that's not him," Sarah would laugh. But they all worked together. On this particular December morning, Sarah was teaching her class about different countries. They were learning about England. "Today we have a special surprise," Sarah told her excited students. "We're going to video chat with someone from London." The children whispered among themselves as Sarah set up her computer. When James's face appeared on the screen, the class went silent with wonder. "Hello from London," James smiled and waved. He was wearing his Red Guard uniform, having just finished his shift at the palace. The students waved back shyly at first, then became excited when James showed them his tall bearskin hat and answered their questions about being a royal guard. "Do you still have to stand really still?" one boy asked. "Yes, that's still part of my job," James explained. "But now we have better rules for hot days, thanks to your teacher." After the video chat, Sarah's students drew new pictures of royal guards in London. Some drew guards with big smiles instead of serious faces. Others drew Sarah hugging the guard. The pictures made Sarah laugh and filled her heart with happiness. That evening at home, Sarah had another video call with James. This one was private, just the two of them. "The children loved meeting you," Sarah told him. "They think you're a real-life superhero." "I'm far from a superhero," James laughed. "But I have news that might make them excited." James told Sarah that he had been approved for a 2-week vacation. He was coming to America, to Ohio, in just 1 month. "Really?" Sarah could hardly believe it. "You're really coming here?" "I want to see your world," James said. "You saw mine. Now it's my turn." Since Sarah had returned home, they had video called each other every week. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes just for a few minutes between Sarah's teaching and James's guard duties, but they never missed a week. What had started as an unusual meeting had grown into something neither of them had expected, a deep friendship that might be becoming something more. 2 days before Christmas, Sarah stood in the airport, waiting nervously. James's flight from London had landed. Any minute now, he would walk through those doors. When he finally appeared, wearing jeans and a blue sweater instead of his guard uniform, Sarah couldn't help herself. She ran forward and hugged him, just as she had done that day at Buckingham Palace. This time, instead of collapsing, James hugged her back. "No fainting this time," he joked, his blue eyes bright with happiness. Sarah's parents were waiting to drive them home. James would stay with them during his visit. Sarah had planned many things to show him: her school, her favorite places in town, a real American Christmas with her family. As they drove through the snowy Ohio streets, James looked out the window with wonder. This was all new to him, just as London had been new to Sarah. "Is it strange being here?" Sarah asked. "So different from London." "Not strange," James said. "Just another adventure." That evening, Sarah's family gathered in the living room to hear James tell his side of the story everyone now knew. How he had felt dizzy but couldn't move. How he had heard Sarah's voice asking if he was okay. How he had whispered, "Help me," before everything went dark. If Sarah hadn't noticed, if she hadn't broken the rules and hugged me, James said, I don't know what would have happened. Sarah's mother wiped away a tear. Sometimes the most important rules are the ones about being kind to others. 1 year later, Sarah returned to London. This time, she wasn't going as a tourist. She was moving there, having accepted a teaching position at a school for children with special needs. And she wasn't going alone. James was with her, carrying her suitcase as they walked hand in hand through Heathrow Airport. As they passed a newsstand, they saw a magazine with a photo of Buckingham Palace on the cover. The headline read, "Royal Guard's new safety rules mark 1-year anniversary." James and Sarah smiled at each other. One simple act of kindness had changed not only their lives but also centuries of tradition. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories begin with someone simply noticing what everyone else misses.